This is another Project 2025 training video featuring Katie Sullivan, who was acting Assistant Attorney General, Department of Justice under Trump. In this clip, Sullivan says the next conservative administration will need to eradicate all equity plans.
I think you can expect that equity and all of the equity executive orders under Biden will be repealed early in the next administration. This is going to require a very detailed plan to execute the eradication of the dictates in the equity orders. For instance, there's a gender advisor position created by one of these executive orders. That position has to be eradicated, as well as all the task forces, the removal of all the equity plans from all the websites, and a complete rework of the language in internal and external policy documents and grant applications.
And this is another Project 2025 training video featuring Dan Huff, former legal advisor in the White House Presidential Personnel Office under Trump, laying out how political appointees should be ready to enforce dramatic changes and face blowback when they do.
If the next Republican president does not execute a dramatic course correction, there may never be another chance. So if you're not on board with helping implement a dramatic course correction because you're afraid it'll damage your future employment prospects, it'll harm you socially. Look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing. But please, do us all a favor and sit this one out.
And this is another Project 2025 training video titled The Political Appointees Survival Guide. It features Max Primac, a former deputy administrator at USAID during the Trump administration.
Now, in terms of a survival tip, do not let career bureaucrats hinder you from advancing the president's agenda. Keep in mind, you're coming into a place, Washington, D.C., that does not share your conservative values. They're even hostile to it, because you're here to do something that's not in their interest. They're not going to be your friend, and they're not going to help you succeed. What are you doing? You're here to cut government. You're here to cut spending. You're here to cut regulations. You're here to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on. But a lot of careers have been made from that. A lot of money has been made from that. Fiefdoms have been built around it. So you're going to get a lot of opposition here. It's an entire industry of opposition from lobbyists, professional associations, contractor groups, and disappointingly, faith-based organizations.
And finally, I want to turn to a Project 2025 training video featuring Alexi Walter, a former Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security. In this video, he encourages future appointees to avoid mainstream news outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, instead take their message to conservative media.
The American people who vote for a conservative presidential administration, they're not reading the New York Times. They're not reading the Washington Post. Actually, to the contrary, if those outlets publish something, they're going to assume it's false. So the only way to reach them with any voice of credibility is through working with conservative media outlets.
So Andy Kroll, investigative reporter for ProPublica, if you can respond, this is just an excerpt of the videos that you have released inside Project 2025's secret training videos.
Yeah, I would pull out a couple of key points for your audience, Amy. I would say first that there is a level of extreme rhetoric in these videos, even down to the choice of words in these different clips. We hear the word eradicate a lot, and then we hear eradicate in the context of removing the word climate change from any federal government document that a future appointee sees. Obviously, that would not move the country in the right direction in terms of combating this existential threat that we face with climate change. You hear eradicate in terms of getting rid of policies that are responding to gender inequality, racial inequality. I mean, those executive actions that Katie Sullivan in the second clip discussed, those are things responding to the abuses surfaced by the Me Too movement, or the abuses surfaced, the injustices surfaced in 2020 and during the racial uprisings then as well. Getting rid of all of those. And then you have, with this last clip, the former DHS press secretary, you have someone basically saying, when you get into government, just talk to conservative media. Shut out everybody else. I mean, mainstream media, but just about everyone else as well. Only talk to the people who you agree with, who like you. That the audiences served by those conservative outlets are the only ones that matter. That's not what a presidential administration, Democratic or Republican, is supposed to do. You're supposed to serve the whole country, but clearly that is not the advice that they're getting in these clips.
It's very interesting that they advise the right-wing administration not to leave a paper trail, yet they have left quite a video trail. As we wrap up, Andy, the most important takeaways at this point.
Yeah, the most important takeaways, I think, for people watching are the first time that Trump ran and then, surprisingly to many, got elected, his operation was very unprepared. They did not have a bench of people ready. There was chaos, there was confusion, and that set back that administration for perhaps months, maybe even a year or two into the Trump first administration. If he is elected again, that will not be the case. These videos have a lot of extreme content in them, a lot of eyebrow-raising advice, for instance, like don't leave a paper trail, which you just referenced. But really what they are trying to do is prepare these thousands or tens of thousands of people to get in government and enact a pretty conservative, a right-wing agenda, and be prepared and trained to do it from the moment that administration starts. That is different from before. And the voting public needs to understand that when they think about these two candidates, when they think about what that Trump agenda would be if he gets elected in November and takes office in January.
Andy Kroll, we want to thank you so much for being with us, investigative reporter for ProPublica. His new expose titled Inside Project 2025 Secret Training Videos. ProPublica has posted the full 23 videos totaling more than 14 hours of content on its website. We will link to it.